switching schools, not knowing anybody, and just seeing that, that seemed to be the basis of a lot of friendships.
It's so true, Jason. I think sports is such a great connector. Whether you've moved all over and you see someone wearing a Dodgers hat or wearing your team, and maybe it's just a little head nod, maybe it's just the acknowledgement that it's your team or your way to connect. It's just one thing I love about sports.
Now you got it, man. I mean, for me, it's a story that kind of repeated itself over and over. I'll give you an example. High school, started 10th grade. And, back then, I'm going to say at least by 10th grade, all the kids you knew that collected cards when they were 8, 9, and 10, most of them had moved on. You know what I mean? Baseball cards were no longer really going to be that currency of friendship. But, I had a Spanish class, and there was this guy, who sat next to me just kind of alphabetically, pretty much. I didn't really know him, didn't have any reason to think we have much in common. But one day he showed up to school wearing a Lakers shirt. My LA's coming through, right? I know, I know at some point you're like, man, we're about the Brewers, the Bucks, and the Packers here. But anyways, I'm from LA, so I can get away with it. Anyways, he's wearing a Lakers shirt. So I'm just like, hey, man, do you like the Lakers? And he's like, oh, I love the Lakers. And I'm like, me too. Literally. And now it's 40 years later. This is seriously one of my very best friends in the world, right?
Join me, Jeremy Swick, on Into the Unknown, a podcast that delves into the personal journeys, stories, and experiences of individuals across diverse professions. As a historian by trade, I firmly believe that our personal histories shape our present and offer valuable insights into our paths ahead. With that being said, let's get into it. On this episode of Into the Unknown, I am joined with a very special guest, Jason A. Schwartz. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. I appreciate that, Jeremy.
Man, I want to say I appreciate talking to you, getting to know you over the last few years. We are brothers in Kenny Washington collecting, and we'll get into that.
Absolutely.
So, I always like to talk about the importance of networking, kind of how people are connected, because you really never know when you meet people or how you meet people. Do you remember how we're actually connected?
I was trying to remember. I think I have it right, but I could have it backwards. So, something I like to say collecting is connecting. So, I think you had posted some really cool Kenny Washington item you just picked up that I happened to run across. And I think I sent you a note, but on Facebook probably, or Facebook Messenger. But it might be that I posted some Kenny Washington item I picked up, and then you sent me a note. I can't remember which, but I think that's what it came down to.
It's funny because I was trying to do the same thing and I couldn't quite recall or quite find where it was. And I think it was one of us posted something about Kenny Washington in one of the many Facebook memorabilia collecting groups are. And
Mhm.
any friend of Kenny is a friend of mine.
Absolutely. And I mean, for now, it's kind of good that there aren't zillions of Kenny Washington collectors because, there's more for us. But yeah, I mean, it was actually really cool to see, hey, here's another guy collecting Kenny Washington. It's not just me because the hobby's no fun if it's just you.
I couldn't agree more, man. So what got you into Kenny specifically?
Man, oh man, great question. That's something I was trying to think about too, because these days I'm so hardcore into it that it's hard to believe there was a time not that long ago that honestly I couldn't have told you who he was. Right. So I think for me, just starting with Jackie Robinson, for me, my main sport is baseball, not football. I grew up in LA, a Dodger fan, and so there's that Jackie connection. So really just the more I learned about Jackie Robinson and, at some point you learn, even if you follow him, for his baseball heroics and civil rights breakthroughs and things like that, you learn that, oh, hey, he played football at UCLA. And then you start to learn about that team, right? And I would say for me, the book called The Black Bruins by James W. Johnson, historian, was really what got me. I mean, it was incredible. You come away after reading that book realizing, oh my God, there was a guy on the team that might have been better than Jackie Robinson at football and baseball, right? He integrated the NFL. He might have been the greatest high school athlete in the history of Los Angeles, which is where I grew up, right? And the list just goes on. And it's like, wow, this guy is amazing. And of course, in my mindset, the first thing you think of then is, does he have cards? Right? And you look and it's like, oh man, okay, these are probably a little pricey. They're from 1948 and 1949, but what the heck, let's do it. And all I can say, you too, I bet, is I'm kind of glad I got in on the early side, because whatever I was buying 2 3 years ago, I feel like now they're double or triple when I see these things pop up on eBay. So yeah, but yeah, I got to credit the Black Bruins. That book was amazing, and that really got me hooked.
So let's go back a little farther. I want to know your origin story, that comic book issue number one. How'd you become a fan? How'd you grow up?
Yeah, good question. So I grew up in LA, in big place, right? So anything you can find when you're growing up in a city that big to connect with other people and form friendships helps. I have friends that grew up in small towns, and you just kind of like go to school with the same 10 kids every year, and the friendships kind of happen that way. But LA, at one point, I think it was for the start of third grade, I switched to a new school. And so I literally knew nobody, right? I mean, my sister went there, but in my class, I didn't know anybody. And the thing I noticed was there were maybe 10 kids in the class, all boys, but 10 kids in the class that during every break would bust out their baseball cards and trade. And they just looked like they were having a blast. And I didn't have any baseball cards at this point. I had literally never even watched a Dodger game, despite being an 8-year-old kid in LA. But it just looked like that's what the cool kids were doing, right? I was definitely not a cool kid, but even when you're not, you don't mind aspiring. And so I went out, I bought some packs of baseball cards. I didn't really know who anybody was. Luckily, a couple of the cards, like I think I had Joe Morgan, it said All Star right on the card. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess he's good. I show up with my cards and I'm like, hey guys, I collect baseball cards too. Right. And I'm hoping they don't ask me anything hard to expose me as a fraud. Right. That I'd been collecting for a day. Right. But, this crew just kind of welcomed me in. And I think that meant so much to me that baseball cards just became incredibly special to me. I mean, they really were my ticket to amazing friendships at this new school where I didn't know anybody. And I'll say, even throughout my life, like even as an adult, it becomes a way of connecting with people. I'm not great in a room full of strangers, right? But if you just, hey, who are your favorite baseball players growing up? Oh, cool. Did you collect cards? And then, pretty soon it's like, oh yeah, 1979 tops. Those were fun cards. Did you get the bump wills? Weirdly, that's just kind of the way I connect. But I'd say that was the origin, switching schools, not knowing anybody, and just seeing that, that seemed to be the basis of a lot of friendships.
It's so true, Jason. I think sports is such a great connector. Whether you've moved all over and you see someone wearing a Dodgers hat or wearing your team, and maybe it's just a little head nod, maybe it's just the acknowledgement that it's your team or your way to connect. It's just one thing I love about sports.
Now you got it, man. I mean, for me, it's a story that kind of repeated itself over and over. I'll give you an example. High school, started 10th grade, and back then, I'm going to say at least by 10th grade, all the kids you knew that collected cards when they were 8, 9, and 10, most of them had moved on. You know what I mean? Baseball cards were no longer really going to be that currency of friendship, but I had a Spanish class, and there was this guy, who sat next to me just kind of alphabetically, pretty much. I didn't really know him, didn't have any reason to think we'd have much in common. But one day he showed up to school wearing a Lakers shirt. My LA's coming through, right? I know, I know at some point you're like, man, we're about the Brewers, the Bucks, and the Packers here. But anyways, I'm from LA, so I can get away with it. Anyways, he's wearing a Lakers shirt. So I'm just like, hey, man, do you like the Lakers? And he's like, oh, I love the Lakers. And I'm like, me too. Literally. And now it's 40 years later. This is seriously one of my very best friends in the world. Right. And that's all it was like we figured out we were both Lakers fans. And then, of course, from there, Dodgers fans too. And that was that. I mean, yeah, that's what sports does. That's what cards do. That's what hobbies do. And some people don't need that stuff to meet a whole bunch of people and make friends. I feel like for me, It's always been the best way. It's always been the easiest way. And the people I've met have always been like just incredible, awesome people.
I couldn't agree more. It's funny because, as kids, you grow up collecting a lot of times, trading, all that. But then, as what I like to call becoming a big kid, it's very interesting the wide range of people that either never stopped collecting or have gotten back into it, especially post 2020. But it's been fascinating, going to any kind of card shows or anything like that. Who you're running into? Oh yeah, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, or I do brain surgeries, or I'm a lawyer, I'm a CEO, and it's funny on LinkedIn every once in a while I reach out to people or they'll reach out to me. Hey, I didn't know you collect sports cards. That's pretty cool. XYZ.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, when you're in elementary school, the kids are a little easier to spot. I mean, back then it would be because there'd be like a wad of cards in their pocket, right? I mean, that's what we did back then. We didn't even have plastic sheets. That's how old I am. So we just carried our cards in our pocket, rubber band, whatever. But yeah, so you could spot them. These days, yeah, it's funny when I meet people my age, there aren't any telltale signs necessarily, but sometimes it just happens. Funny story. Uh, my well, now wife, but at the time girlfriend, we were looking for a place to live. This guy's showing me his place. He's put it up for rent. He's showing me his place, and he's got like a lot of cool, like collectible music albums, Bob Dylan, The Doors, whatever. Just kind of hanging on the walls in frames, right? And so I said to him, "Hey, Michael, are you a collector?" Right, meaning music. And he's like, "Yeah, actually, I am. Have you ever heard of Topps baseball cards?" I was like, dude, you don't even know who you're talking to. I have, my friend. And, anyways, it turns out he's got a binder of the 1968 top set, fully autographed, just missing like, I don't know, 30 cards or something like that. Right. But I mean, just incredible stuff. But, yeah, I mean, it's not as easy to spot. So it's like a super pleasant surprise, when you meet people these days, adults, through business connections or other things, and it turns out they're collectors. It's like it's a great feeling. It's like cool. We're gonna get along.
Exactly, Jason. So you mentioned you collected growing up as a kid, all that. When did you start getting into? Because if I'm not mistaken, you have a pretty impressive Henry Aaron collection, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you got it. You got it. In fact, I'm going to brag a little bit. If we have any listeners, viewers in Atlanta, the collection is at the Atlanta History Center. It's on display right now. So, uh, yeah. So at the moment, if you said, "Hey, show me a cool Hank Aaron card," I'd say I don't have one. They're all in Atlanta. But um, he was, it's kind of, as it's funny, it's like as a kid, so much of the stuff that we learn as a kid and that we love as a kid, at some point I think we convince ourselves that it's kind of dumb and childlike and whatever, and at some point as an adult you realize, what, maybe I had it right. So uh I will say I was so dumb about baseball when I was first starting to learn it in 1978 as a collector, that to me, learning that Hank Aaron had the most home runs automatically made him the greatest player of all time, which automatically made him the player whose baseball card I absolutely had to have. Right. And the beauty of it in 78 is you had friends who had older brothers, cousins, whatever. Right. So I knew kids, like kids my age, that had like 76 Hank Aaron that was like a hand me down from, an older relative or something like that. So I think I got my first Hank Aaron probably a couple of years later, just in a trade, um, around 1980 or whatever. And wherever I had the chance, I mean, I'd go to card shows, but don't get me wrong, I'd go to card shows with, $4.50 in my pocket. I wasn't exactly going to be coming home with a big stack of all time greats, but, you'd find like a beat up 1972 Hank Aaron. You might find a beat up 1968 Hank Aaron. So slowly but surely, I just started kind of building his career, on $4 a month. But once I got to college, this is going to sound crazy, and I'm going to say, don't try this at home, right? Because I know education is a big part of this podcast. You've interviewed educators and people where education's made such a huge difference in their life. But I went to a card show in college. I saw a Hank Aaron rookie card, and I felt like it was calling my name pretty hard. All right. Well, it was $130, which I did not have. Right. I mean, now it'd be a lot more, but it was $130. I still remember the price. And I got this idea. And I was like, if I don't buy any school books this year for college, I could afford this card. And that's what I did. So I literally went a semester with no textbooks. And I had literally entered that semester with a 4.0. And that semester, I got a C in math, which was my best subject. It was my major. I got a C. I didn't have the book. you know, like I think I managed like a B in something else, and managed to do okay in some other things because college professors are kind of famous for making you buy the expensive book and then not really using it anyway. So that was part of my gamble. But yeah, literally, my Hank Aaron rookie card came at the expense of a semester of education. Um,
Worth it. 100% worth it.
I was going to say the sad thing is I really don't have any regrets. But once you had the rookie card, right, then it's kind of like, okay, well, the rest are going to be easy. And so there was something called the Kit Young catalog, right? Kind of like, in Wisconsin, you get, Larry Fritch was like the big
Mhm.
dealer. Kit Young, I think, was out of San Diego or something, but it was a mail order catalog and it would come every month or so, and I'd usually pick out one Hank Aaron card, and it might be like $8 or something. It wasn't like a huge expense, but you know $8, and slowly but surely, right, kind of starting to fill them in. Fast forward, land the plane. Kind of a not a happy year of my life in some ways, but 2014, I found myself divorced, right, which was kind of a lonely and not fun place to be in a lot of ways. But then it was kind of like, wait, hold on. Nobody cares what I spend my money on. And I discovered a place called Dean's Cards. They're kind of pricier than
Dangerous place.
on eBay, but they have everything. And I literally just filled in my entire Hank Aaron collection. Like any card I was missing, including his All-Star cards, or like, there's one in 1964 where he's with Willie Mays. There's one in 63 where he's with Ernie Banks, kind of all those extras, not just the base cards. I just filled them all in from Dean's Cards, finished out the career. And, from there it was like, well, maybe I want to collect magazines where he's on the cover. Maybe I need to collect the bobbleheads too, and the collection just got ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, it's a funny one because it literally started when I was dreaming of it when I was 8. Probably got my first card when I was 10. So it's really been like a lifelong love affair with building up that collection.
That's it's impressive, and especially a human being like Hank Aaron. It's,
Oh
I
yeah,
know maybe not at the time when you were collecting it because he had the most home runs, but I think it's one of those things you learn more and more about these people or these athletes, and it's great when you pick a good one.
absolutely. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, anybody who makes the major leagues, obviously, they are amazing, right? And you beat the odds no matter who you are to make the major leagues. But you want to talk about beating the odds? Like, holy cow! There was nothing about Hank Aaron or the state of Major League Baseball when he was 10, 12 years old that gave anybody any reason to think he would someday break Babe Ruth's record. I mean, talk about a one in a trillion kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, as you learn more about the player, and I think for us, we can say this for sure about Kenny Washington as well, right? It's like, you know. Sometimes we're happy to collect a guy that maybe we don't think was like the world the world's greatest human being in various ways, but a lot of times I think the guys we end up collecting really were just incredible people, you know, did a lot for others, and you really feel good about the collection you build. And with Hank Aaron, I mean, he's about as good as they get.
Mhm. So, how did the Atlanta History Center aspect come to about? You mean you have this giant collection? You're collecting more and more, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so that was crazy. That was crazy because um, I will say, and I know, you were with the College Football Hall of Fame, so you've got, a little more about the inner workings of museums and what kinds of things they display and stuff like that. I used to always imagine, man, wouldn't it be the coolest thing if one day some collection I put together ended up in a museum or something, right? I never thought it would happen, but what had happened was Hank Aaron passed away January 2021. In fact, we just passed the 4-year anniversary, and I had written an article for Saber baseball cards And it was mainly just kind of, my eulogy to Hank Aaron as a collector. It didn't get into like his whole life. It just, I told some funny stories, about my collection, and funny things I did in the name of Hank, I guess. And along the way, I illustrated it with items from my collection. And people enjoyed it when it came out. I think a lot of us gobbled up a lot of Hank Aaron tributes, when he passed away. But I guess it was around January 2024, if I'm remembering right. I get an email out of the blue from a guy that, he's like the senior curator or director, or whatever the title would be at the History Center, and he had read that piece, right? And he saw, hey, the guy that wrote this had a lot of stuff, and so he pretty much just emailed me out of the blue. And he was like, hey, my name's Paul. We're putting together an exhibit to go with the 50th anniversary of the home run record. It seems like you've got a lot of cool things. Would you possibly be willing to lend us some items for the exhibit? And I couldn't believe it. It was like, this was my dream come true. And so it was very funny. And we scheduled a call, and the thing mainly of interest was the cards, and on their end, which was cool, because they had, oh my god, they had ridiculous stuff. Billy Aaron, for instance, Hank's widow, had agreed, like, hey, just come to the basement, take whatever you want. They were working with the Braves. The Brewers donated stuff, right? So I mean, they had friends at high places. So when it came down to it, all that was missing was the baseball cards, pretty much. And what was really funny was Paul was like, yeah, do you think you'd be able to make like high res color copies of your cards so we could put them on display? And I was like, Paul, why don't you put the real cards on display? Like that's what I think collectors and even the general public want to see. They want to see the real stuff, right? And he's like, you'd let us use your real cards? I was like, you're the Atlanta History Center. Of course I will. And so that's what we worked out. And like fate works in mysterious ways. It literally turned out that on Hank Aaron's birthday, February 5th, I had a flight to the Southeast for work anyway through Atlanta. And so I just tweaked the layover a little. My carry-on is like, don't drop this. It's my best Hank Aaron cards, and some magazines and some other things I threw in there too. But yeah, I land in Atlanta, take an Uber to the History Center, right? Uh, Hand off my stuff, fill out a little bit of paperwork, in case things get lost or whatever, or they can't remember, who gave them what, and hustle back to the airport and catch my plane to, where was I going? Orlando. Yeah, and that's how it all came together. So it was just, it was a funny thing. I'm going to talk about fate, being that it was Hank Aaron's birthday when I went and dropped all this off. But just the idea that, like, here I am writing like this eulogy, the day Hank Aaron died, which was like a pretty emotional day for me, and I had to write. I had to, like, express myself and honor him, and that turned into, now my cards are on display at the History Center. And they did such a beautiful job with the exhibit. So anybody near Atlanta, you got to go check it out. I'm not saying it because it's my cards. The exhibit, even forget about the cards, is incredible, just amazing. So I was in Hank Aaron heaven the two times I went, and I'm going to go again.
Jason, I love that. I love that story, and I appreciate you sharing. What got you into writing? You mentioned you've run quite a few pieces now.
Yeah, true enough, true enough. So that was kind of a shift for me. I mean, I don't want to get too philosophical, but I think at a certain point, right, as collectors, we are absolutely consumers, right? Like, we're acquiring things. We get all this stuff, right? And I love to do that. I don't really have plans to slow it down, but I feel like part of the way that you kind of add balance to your life, and this is something that just kind of hit me maybe 5 years ago, and I started doing it a little, but now I do it a lot. Is I said, the way you get balance is, you can be a consumer and a collector, but if you're also a creator, right? And I mean, for you, you're a creative, you're a content guy, with your business already. For me, I felt like I needed to kind of turn that on a little bit more on my end, right? And so, writing about cards, right? I wish I had the talent to, like, write a great novel, but writing about cards was kind of what got me in. And then what I'm doing now is still writing about cards, but I'm also, this is a learning area for me. I mentioned I studied math, right? So you're a real historian. I'm kind of an amateur fake, trying to learn it as I go, historian. But I'm trying now to also do some kind of, I'll call it real research, and, like, push out stories that maybe have nothing to do with cards, but just tell a cool story, often about, a player, an athlete usually, that folks have never really heard of, where they're going to read it and be like, oh, holy cow, this is amazing. I never even heard of this guy, but this is great. So, but yeah, I mean, it kind of came out of this sense that, like, for a while, man, I'd come home and, like, every day there'd be like a little, yellow padded envelope from eBay. Yeah,
I'm looking at mine right on the floor.
which was like, dude, some days that's what got me out of bed, was like, oh, today's gonna be a great day. I think a card's coming, right? I mean, I needed that. But yeah, I think just a feeling of, like, uh, just having a little more balance in my life by also being a creator, and to me, creating, can take a lot of forms. But I started doing some art. I started doing a lot of writing. All of it really connected to cards, but these days stepping out a little more into the unknown, I'll say, in terms of, I'll call it just sort of pure research, on athletes or sports history.
Jason, I love that. As we talked about your journey, can you think of a time where you made a decision not really knowing the outcome and just went for it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a couple examples, one small, one big. So, sort of tying it into, like, exactly what we were just talking about. Um, it's one thing for me to, like, write articles for my own blog, like 1939bruins.com, or even the Saber baseball cards blog, where the standards are just kind of, hey, write something you enjoy that you think people will want to read. Cool. Okay. um, I had an opportunity come up, just a couple, I guess, was it early January, maybe? Yeah, early January, beginning of this year, or maybe it was late December. But at any rate, I'm in Society for American Baseball Research. Our national convention is going to be in Dallas this coming year, and they put out a call for papers for a pretty prestigious journal called the National Pastime. And this is like research with a capital R, like, you know, 50 citations for your article, finding things that people didn't already know, whatever, right? Like hardcore research that I can't say I'd ever really had published or attempted too much. And but one of my interests was, there was a player named Dave Hoskins. He integrated the Texas League, in 1952. I got a big Dave Hoskins collection, and I thought, what if this journal came out at our convention in Dallas and nobody wrote anything about Dave Hoskins? What a shame that would be. So I thought, okay, I don't really have the research credentials to submit a paper to this journal. like, you know, um, but I want this journal to have something about Dave Hoskins so badly that I'm just going to go for it. And so I submitted an abstract. It got accepted, which was scary, right? Because there was always a part of me that was like, hey, if I turn it in and they say no, at least I tried. But they actually accepted it. And so I'm working on the paper now, and it's like some of the hardest, like most difficult writing of my life, right? Um, and when you're, if you're writing about Mike Trout, right, it's like, from the time that guy was 15, probably he was covered in the papers, and you can find this stuff. But when you're writing about, a guy that was born in the 1920s, right, played in the Negro leagues for a while, played in, like, Class C and Class D minor leagues for a while, and then came to Texas in 1952. Sources are few and far between. You know what I mean? It's hard, right? You know, you're a
Yeah.
historian, you've done research, you know, like it's hard to do, this is hard work. But I decided I'm gonna go for it. And I'm actually almost done. And I feel like what I've put together is pretty good. You know, I mean, I'm sure the editor will like blast it with like, you know, a lot of
The
ready.
red pen of doom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm gonna say, so kind of keeping with the theme, that's definitely you know, something that you know, for me was into the unknown. It was like, hey, let me try something I've never done, that I don't even know if I can do. Um, Separate from sports, I'm going to say my biggest into the unknown. And it's funny because so many of your guests have been amazing with their stories, and it's like blowing me away. You know, my example might be a little more pedestrian, even though it's you know, still very special to me. Is I'm going to say literally, I mentioned, you know, I got divorced in 2014. Um, and I just assumed I'd stay single for the rest of my life. I just assumed I was somebody that, you know, evidently wasn't made for, you know, relationships, marriage, whatever. And, you know, but then I did meet somebody, my current wife, and I rolled the dice. I was like, you know, uh, maybe I suck at this, but I got to at least try again because you know, this person's incredible, and maybe I could make it work. So I don't know if like, I don't know if anybody's gone the relationship angle with you on the Into the
I
Unknown,
love
but
it, Jason. I love it, man.
yeah, yeah. But I mean that, yeah, that one definitely paid off. That definitely paid off, right?
I love to hear that, man. So, title of the podcast, Into the Unknown. You've mentioned a lot of these. What are you working on now? Whether it's collecting, whether it's life, what are you up to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, uh, you know, I'm looking forward to finishing this paper, and then because I feel like, even though it's been really difficult, it's been really rewarding, and I'm kind of proud of what I did. You know, and we'll see. Hopefully, the editor likes it and it makes it in and all that kind of stuff. But it kind of makes me want to like do more of that. Um, I toyed with the idea, and I literally have no idea what it would be about. But I even toyed with the idea of like, man, I wonder how hard it would be to write a book. Like I would love to write a book, says the guy who's never written a book. So you've got authors listening that are like, yeah, it's a little harder than you think, my friend. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a part of me that, you know, it's almost like as a collector, sometimes you collect a card and then you're like, what's the next one? What's an even better one, right? In the same way, it's like, I'm really proud of this article. What would be the next step from there? I don't know, right? But uh, you know, I feel like uh, in some way, whether it's like a journal article or other things, I feel like in some way, what's really rewarding for me is to, you know, through kind of the vast history of sports, find cool stories that most people don't know, right? And then tell them in a way that's hopefully entertaining, educational, accurate, etc. You know, and so I think I'm kind of hooked on that. You know, now from a card perspective, you and I could be, you know, duking it out for similar if one ever pops up. But the absolutely the toughest Kenny Washington card out there, probably single digits in terms of population, is he actually has a baseball card, 1950 Pacific Coast League with Los Angeles Angels. Man, oh man, if that card came up, I would trade almost my entire collection of everything else for it. But once in a blue moon, man, the closest I ever came was on some search. I found a guy who had sold one like 3 years earlier, you know. But yeah, so that's kind of the collecting holy grail. And then I have like some sort of silly things. I shouldn't call them silly, but they're just, you know, much easier. Like when I was a kid, I loved Manny Mota. He was a pinch hitter for the Dodgers, and I realized, you know, I don't really have like any of his older cards. I have his career from about 1970 to 1981. And I thought maybe I could fill in the 1960s on Manny Mota. You know, it's like whenever you're chasing the big fish, it's good to have some little fish because
You need some side quests and some adventures, that's for sure.
you do, because it's like if your whole game is chasing one card that you're probably not even going to find, then it's like the year goes by and you're like, oh man, my collection just stood still, So I want to be able to say, well, no, I filled in my Manny Moda collection. Maury Wills is another player. I think it'd be fun to maybe chase his whole career because it's not too tough. Um, so, but yeah, I mean, it's yeah, that Kenny Washington card though, man, I would move mountains for that one. But uh, you know,
It's out there somewhere. I do not have one. I'll let you know that.
yeah,
Not yet, but it's one of those things. I think hopefully it's one of us two, and I feel like it's going to be at some random convention, just in a binder or just, oh yeah, I got some old vintage. Here you go. Uh, just
yeah.
because it's so few and far between.
It is. It was a regional issue too, right? It's like, okay, one of my toughest Hank Aaron cards is it's called Lake to Lake Dairy, 1960, and it was a Wisconsin dairy that stapled the cards to milk cartons, right?
Yeah,
And so
yep.
if you were in Wisconsin, you had a shot at this card in 1960, but if you were in California or New York, this card just wasn't going to be there. So this particular Kenny Washington card was only distributed, I think, in San Diego, and the producer Higgs Dairy, I think, made way more cards of the San Diego Padres, their local team, than they did of players on the other team. So anybody that's not in the Padres, I think, is a short print anyways. But they didn't make a lot of cards, period. And they were pretty much only in San Diego, as far as I know. And so there's a part of me, like, I know of people who've traveled to Cuba and Venezuela, like to find Cuban and Venezuelan baseball cards. I'm literally thinking, and I think I wouldn't have to twist the wife's arm too hard on the first part of this. I'm literally thinking I need to plan a family vacation to San Diego. And then while Jody's at the beach, I got to hit the pawn shops and
Every
the garage sales, in search of Kenny Washington's minor league baseball card. I've been slowly filling in Kenny Washington's first year varsity at UCLA with the football game programs, and it's the home games, like, because they played at the Coliseum, and they had pretty good attendance even in 1937 when they weren't that good. There were a lot of these programs out there, so that's the good news. If you want, like, UCLA hosting California, there's a lot of these out there. Eventually one's going to pop up for you, but I think it was a road game at Oregon State. It's not 100,000 seats, right? um Anyways, yeah, I don't know if I'm ever going to find that Oregon State UCLA, but I'm working on their first year. Um, it's kind of more on brand for me to, like, try to collect all the 1939 stuff, because I got that 1939 Bruins site.
yes,
But I'll tell you, it's like 1939 programs, because Jackie Robinson was on the team. People are posting these programs anywhere from like $200 to $1,000,
yep,
whereas 1937, these programs, if you find them, those are going to be priced like 20 to 40 bucks.
yep.
So I had to make that call. I'm like, no, I'm not going to collect the 1939. So I got the UCLA USC, and that's good enough for me from 39.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
me,
How,
it's
how about how
crazy.
about uh, how about you? How about you?
I'm gonna
Some
show
more
you
Kenny?
something. It's not
Yeah.
quite a. I will call it the Book of Kenny.
Oh, nice. Oh God, a whole page of the Bowman rookie. Oh no, sorry, two whole pages of the Bowman rookie.
Mm,
Oh man. Okay, okay. I'm seeing one more Bowman rookie. I'm seeing three leaf. Do I see a white lettering, or two
you
white
do.
letters, or three white
Yes.
letters? How many am I
Just.
seeing now?
Well, no, these, none of these are white letters.
Okay, none of those are the white letter. Okay.
We got some of these.
Oh man.
I should look where my camera is more often. There we go.
Goodness. Is this whole binder, Kenny?
And then it ends. But
And then it ends. Oh my God.
and then
Oh.
actually some of the cards you made
Oh, I
are
recognize those. I
in the
don't know if
background.
I don't know
I'm
if I
slowly gonna fill up this with Kenny's. It's kind of whenever I see them for a sniperable price now on eBay, and then I get a lot of cards graded anyway. So
Yeah, I hear you. I'll say two things. There was something that just went maybe 2 days ago. It was a white letter rookie card, which is tough. The back was a total disaster. Like, it had been glued, right? It had been glued. And maybe whoever bought it thinks they might have a way to clean it up or something. I don't know. But oh my God, the back was a complete disaster and it still went for like $280.
Yep.
I was like, so yeah, yeah, at some point I could be priced out on on Kenny, but I'll tell you about those cards I made, which was like really gratifying to me. Was one of Kenny's granddaughters got in touch with me, and she was like, are would you have any that you could share with the family? And I literally sent, I think I sent 6 packs, and they're distributed among various Washingtons out there. And then what was a lot of fun too, I did a little 20 card set for 1939 Bruin Woody Strode, and she was able to get a pack, get 20 card set to Woody's family as well.
That's
So
great.
yeah, so it's cool. I mean, for me, it's a labor of love, and I just want them. I don't want to go on eBay and like sell them or anything, because I feel like I don't really have the right to anyway. But for me, to just get them into the collections of people like you, or to the families, people that just feel like, hey, these are special cards that tell the story of Kenny Washington. And as you know, he literally has had no official cards since that 1950 baseball card.
Yep.
Like literally, it's been 75 years since he's had an official card. Like if I had connections at Topps, Panini, whatever, I'd be in the boardroom going, "What are you guys doing?" You know?
I could not agree more. And I think the only one that's happy about that is my wallet,
Yeah,
because
right.
whatever 101 they came out with, I don't know how I'd get it, but I think it would come in one of our collections. You know.
You're so right. You're so right. I guess careful what I wish for, because I'm still in that 1978 mindset where I just go buy a pack of cards, at the liquor store, and oh, cool, I got Kenny Washington. But yeah, if they did put Kenny in sets, it would probably be like, yeah, a one of one autograph, where the just the box of cards costs $490, and your
Hmm.
chances of getting the Kenny would be like, 1 in 2 million. So
Yeah.
so yeah, maybe it's for the best. But
Hmm.
to me, the important thing, like I would love to think, because I learned so much about the history of baseball, through collecting cards. I would love to think that young collectors that are picking up football cards these days for Jaden Daniels or whoever, they just get cards of Kenny in their packs and learn his story, and even
Yes.
just learn his name, you know. So I would love to see that. Like, just like we had, 1962 Tops had the Babe Ruth story. I'd love to see like a 20 card insert set, the Kenny Washington story, just in literally whatever the cheapest football product is,
Yep.
whatever kids can afford. And then they learn about Kenny Washington. I think that'd be amazing.
Absolutely. If people want to learn more about the 1939 Bruins and what you do, where can they find you online?
Yeah, so probably the most fun. I've kind of been thinning out my social these days, so I'm not as many places as I used to be. But I would say the main place is the website 1939bruins.com. It's kind of a cross between like history, research with a lowercase r, maybe like coming up with Kenny's baseball stats from his time with the Angels, and collectibles. A lot of collectible stuff. Whenever I get something new, I write it up. So 1939bruins.com. It's also on Facebook as 1939 Bruins as like a group or a page. I can't remember which. Um, I've got a fantastic YouTube. Speaking of one of one, I've only posted one video. You're my guest, right? So, quality over quantity. But that station channel is 1939 Bruins as well. And I will be adding, it was just so much work. So I got to pace myself. But yeah, those are all easy. And then if people just want to, sort of connect with me as a person rather than sort of the author of random stuff, just this name I see on my screen here, Jason A. Schwartz, on LinkedIn, for instance, or even on Facebook, those work too.
Well, Jason, I want to say I appreciated talking with you today. In general, it's always fun to share collecting stories and just learn a little bit more about collectors, man.
Oh, absolutely, man, Jerry, an honor to be on Into the Unknown, right? And just I can't thank you enough. And you are a definite friend in the hobby world to me, unless you get that Kenny Washington baseball card before I do, and then you become enemy number one. But till then, you are my Kenny buddy.
I appreciate it, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.
Fun episode of Into the Unknown. I truly appreciate you taking the time to listen. And if it provides you any value or entertainment, I would love if you shared it with others, liked, subscribed, and really just help the podcast grow. Again, tell a friend, tell a foe, just anyone who might enjoy hearing some stories of people's own journeys and what got them to where they are today. Till next time.